The information contained herein is for educational and reference purposes only, and this video is not intended as a substitute for proper diagnosis or treatment with a qualified healthcare practitioner.
So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Cripps, or maybe I should call him Professor Cripps. The renowned expert on the thyroid gland. I will have a few things to say afterwards to round out the use of iodine in the body, because it's not just thyroid that iodine is important for. Mr. Cripps.
Thank you, Dr. Thorpe. Dr. Thorpe is a medical researcher. He's a pharmacist. He owns Cripps Pharmacy, this place here, and he made this situation possible. Thank you, Dr. Thorpe, for allowing these people come in.
All right.
Okay. I have a lot of evidence-based information for you. It is well researched, well documented, but it is intended for educational purposes only. The diagnosis and the treatment of thyroid remains with your doctor. But I'll give you a lot of information which you should be informed. There's 4 types of thyroid problems. One is low thyroid, the most common one, and we'll discuss that today. The second one is high thyroid, not very common. Then there's Hashimoto, which is high and low, kind of complex. And then there's Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disorder. Now, 1 in 4 females and 1 in 20 men will develop low thyroid in their lifetime. And half of you will not be diagnosed as having low thyroid. That includes my mother. So you have to be your own advocate, so get acquainted with what the symptoms of low thyroid are. I'll read some of them to you, and we'll pass the books on page 6 on the thyroid awareness, the symptoms, and also page 133 of the iodine book. The
That's
girls
Dr.
will pass the
Brownstein's book.
Yeah. So the girls will pass the book around while I mention some of the symptoms, like cold hands and feet is one of the symptoms of low thyroid. Faulty digestion. You would not think that they're related, but they are. Hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. It's really not low, it's low and high. I'll explain that later to you. Fatigue, depression, thinning hair, anxiety, mood swings, inability to concentrate, difficult losing weight, menstrual irregularities, anemia, poor memory, irritability, infertility, dry skin, constipation, brittle nails, leg cramps. All these symptoms are symptoms of low thyroid, and they don't appear to be related, but as we go on you'll see that they are related. Now, there is a test that you should do, and it's called thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. And either your doctor will order that, or you can ask your doctor to do that. It's called TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone test. And the doctor will make a requisition, and you go to the lab and get it done. Always ask for a copy of the report to be mailed to you. Quite often it's misinterpreted, so always have a hard copy mailed to you. Then there's another test that you can do at home, and that's a simple test using a basal glass thermometer. If you don't have one of these, an old-fashioned glass thermometer would do, but it has to be glass, not digital. And the way you do it, suppose you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, at 9 o'clock you take your temperature. Thyroid controls your body temperature. So if your temperature is below normal, it's low thyroid regardless of what the blood test tells you. So this is a very good way to double check. So if your temperature is below normal, plus a few of the symptoms, it's usually low thyroid. Now the problem with the TSH is the range is huge. It runs from 0.38 to 5.5. There is no other test that has such a huge range. As a lab technician, I never seen any other test that has such a huge range. 0.38 to 5.5. You come in anywhere between 5 and 4 and 3 and 2, and the doctor will say you're within the range. Goodbye. But you take your temperature. Thyroid controls your metabolic rate, controls your temperature. So if your temperature is below, it should be 37 is normal. It could be 37.2, still be okay. It could be 36.8 would pass. But if you're starting at 36.7 and a few symptoms, it indicates low thyroid. And if you're way lower than that, it's even worse. Thyroid controls your body temperature. And that's the best way to do that with a glass thermometer. Now, the higher the number, the worse it is. And that's quite often confusing when you get the lab report. That's why you should have a hard copy and take a hard look at it. And if you have any questions, Dr. Thorpe or myself will help you with it. So, those are the two tests that we do. Now, with every low thyroid, there usually is low blood sugar. 95% of the time we have low thyroid, you'll have low blood sugar. And low blood sugar is, it's a green. Low blood sugar is actually low and high. In the morning, your sugar level is here. You had no food overnight, your sugar dropped down low. In the morning, if you have caffeine or sweets or maple syrup, it rises too quickly. That excites the insulin and it drives it down. About 4 hours plus or minus, you crash. You're tired. You need another lift. So you have another caffeine, goes up, and comes down again. This, over a period of time, will wear out your insulin and wear out your adrenals, and you end up type 2 diabetic. So if there's type 2 diabetes in the family, it could be related to low thyroid. From here on, we go to the thyroid gland itself. And it is a butterfly shape on both sides of the bottom of the neck. And it's a very efficient gland. It'll work for you all your life. All it needs is 2 essential nutrients. One is called L-tyrosine. And the other one, anybody guess?
Iodine.
Right. The other is iodine. And iodine is the missing link. So, if you provide tyrosine and iodine to your gland, it'll produce all the thyroid you need. Unless you have surgery, or too much radiation, or an infection, or surgery, I've mentioned that. Otherwise, the thyroid will produce enough hormone, providing you have iodine and tyrosine. Let's talk about iodine. We take iodine for granted. About the early 1800s, the French chemists isolated iodine crystals, but they weren't soluble in water. They were soluble in alcohol only. So Dr. Lugol, not Google, Lugol, added potassium iodide, water, and iodine, and went to solution. And they called it Lugol's solution, still used 200 years later. And it was forgotten. Then fast forward to 1900s, to the New World, North America, and Dr. David Marine found out that children in school, 11-year-olds, had goiter in Ohio region and Michigan. That's around the Great Lakes. So he got the school board to do a pilot test. He took 2,300 11-year-old children and he gave them 7.6 milligrams of iodine daily for 2.5 years. He took another 2,300 and used them as controls. At the end of 2.5 years, the results were phenomenal. The ones that had iodine had no goiter at all, 0.2%. The ones that had iodine had no goiter, and the ones that had no iodine had 22% goiter. So the Department of the United States, the Health Department, got interested and mandated that everybody should have iodine in the salt, and they added 0.385 per teaspoon of iodine. Experiment was done at 7.6 on children, which if you extrapolate that to an adult, it'll come out to about 13 milligrams. Okay, watch this figure 13. So the U.S. Department passed a law, but the Supreme Court overruled it, so it's not mandatory. Canada also put in 0.385% of iodine in the salt. So if you take a teaspoon of salt, you get that much iodine, yet the pilot project was done at 13. So with this little bit of iodine, the goiter disappeared, but low thyroid remained. So they treated low thyroid with desiccated thyroid and synthetic thyroid, which is okay. But low thyroid remained with this little bit of iodine. 10 years ago, they found out that iodine drives out bromine, chlorine, fluorine. It's a detoxifier. And bromine is a huge problem. There used to be bromoseltzer available. They put bromine in certain medications, triple bromide, for example, and they use it in fire retardants. They use it in bread to, not in Canada, they banned in Canada, but in the States they still use it to texturize the dough. And in California alone, they use 6 million pounds of sodium bromide to spray the crops in California. And in 10 years, it increased from 6 to 18 million pounds of sodium bromide that they spray on the crops. Some of that will probably work its way here. So bromine is a big, just walk in and have a seat.
Let me just clarify one fact. The 0.385 per teaspoon is milligrams of iodine per teaspoon. Or 385 micrograms.
With the heavy intake of salt that's loaded in everything, are people getting enough so that they're getting obese, and water retention, but are they getting enough iodine?
No, I'll come to that shortly. Okay, where was I?
Bromine on crops.
You have a pamphlet on bromine, so I wouldn't go detailing that. It shows you what bromine does to the human body and how much, where it is. So that'll be bromide. In 2003, research was done that iodine detoxifies bromine and fluorine. And a whole flurry of research started because it was a big thing. They couldn't get rid of the bromine once it's in your body. So there is a group of elements called the halides, which is your iodine, your bromine, your chlorine, and fluorine. Okay? Iodine is okay. This is toxic, that's toxic, and that's toxic. So by taking more iodine, you eliminate all the other ones. And the shape and size of these halides are the same. So when you're low in iodine, bromine comes along. And it looks an iodine receptor here. Bromine looks similar. So it comes over to iodine. Hey, can I come in? And the receptor looks at the bromide. Yeah, same shape, same size, come on in. Once bromine gets in there, in your breast or in your thyroid or anywhere in your body, it's toxic. And iodine eliminates these toxins. That's huge. So the research started because of this, and the lead researcher was Dr. Guy Abraham. He is a professor of endocrinology, a medical doctor at the University of California School of Medicine. He's considered the best authority on thyroid and iodine. His research indicated that you need 13 milligrams. You see the 13 coming up? 13 milligrams of iodine per person per day. And he broke it up even more. You need 6 for the thyroid, 5 for the breasts, normal size, and 2 for the rest of the body. That's how he broke it up. At the same time, they did a survey in Iceland and in Japan. The average Japanese consumes 13.8 milligrams of iodine every single day of their life. They eat mussels and crabs and oysters, saltwater fish and seaweed, and they consume 13.8. They're the healthiest nation in the world, and they live 4.5 years longer than the Americans, and the incidence of thyroid problems, breast problems, prostate problems is very, very low. So, Dr. Abraham, he broke it down to 6 for the thyroid, and 5 for the breasts, and 2 for the rest of the body. Okay, we have covered the 6 for the thyroid. But how about the other 7? Where does that come in? And that's the job for Dr. Thorpe to tell you. So,
Is that my cue?
that's your cue.
Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Cripps has handled the relationship between thyroid and iodine, and I'm the cleanup batter. I'll tell you about everything else that thyroid does. It's a common misconception that, again, thyroid is the sole user of iodine. That's not true. Iodine receptors are everywhere in every cell of your body. Iodine is needed by every cell of the body. It has several very, very important biological functions in your body. In the mammary gland, one of the reasons that it concentrates 5 milligrams approximately, and this is just an average number. Remember, just like when you do high school exams, there's A's, B's, C's, C+, C minus, D's, and E's. It's basically a big sinusoidal, a bell curve. So on the average, 5 milligrams. Some ladies, for example, will need less. Other ladies will need a lot more. So why is that important? Well, for example, if you don't have enough iodine, people, ladies especially, will suffer from breast tenderness. And also, there's more and more people that I've found showing up asking about cysts and fibroids in the breast. Iodine stops the formation of cysts and fibroids in the breast. It takes down breast tenderness, and it does many other things in the breast as well. It's an antioxidant. It's a detoxifier, but not just of the halides like bromine, chlorine, and fluorine. It also removes heavy metals out of various tissues in the body. Things like lead, cadmium, nickel, and also it's one of the few things that will remove aluminum. And many people are worried about concentrations of aluminum in their body because it's been associated with Alzheimer's disease. Now they don't know whether it's the chicken or the egg that comes first, but aluminum is always accumulated in damaged brain tissue. Iodine is one of the few things that will actually displace and detoxify aluminum. And again, the second most important part besides the breasts, and everybody's got one of these, is the brain. Iodine is extremely important as an antioxidant in the brain. And this is one of the reasons they found that those areas of the world that have low iodine intake, there is various brain degenerative diseases in small children, cretinism, and other problems with mental functioning, mental retardation in general. And that's because the iodine protects the brain against free radical damage. Now these things are not generally well known, and I'm just bringing this up to you so you're aware of all the other things that iodine does besides making thyroid hormones. And these things are absolutely essential. One of the mechanisms by which these modulations of various diseases and disease conditions occur inside the body, in the brain, in the breast tissue, and also for ladies, this is extremely important, in the vagina, uterus, ovaries, is there are certain enzymes called peroxidase, and these enzymes are concentrated in those tissues that have the most effective use of iodine, like the brain, the breast, the thyroid, etc. The liver, the kidneys, and the prostate all have high peroxidase incidences. What the peroxidase does is it takes the iodine and hydrogen peroxide and a long-chain fatty acid like arachidonic acid, omega-3 acids. This is why these things are extremely important to you. Like fish oil EC, extremely important, because the iodine and the hydrogen peroxide, the decomposition of that, combines to make delta iodolactones, which modulate the growth of tissues everywhere in the body. For example, tumor growth is suppressed by high concentrations of delta iodolactones. This is one of the reasons that a Dr. Gerson in the United States based his cancer therapy on very high doses of iodine. Now, it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. He doesn't have the complete picture. Just like other treatments of cancer don't have the complete picture, because there's so many. In fact, there's no such thing as cancer. What there is probably 20,000 different diseases that have certain things in common. And this is why certain therapies are very effective and other therapies for the same person are not effective. And yet those therapies that are not effective for person A will be effective for person B. And that depends on the biochemistry inside the cells of the cancer. And let me just give you an aside here. This is very important. The large pharmaceutical companies, in this case it's Pfizer, have come up with one of these, basically, let me just get into this. I'll tell you exactly what the name of it is. It's called Xalkori with an X, Xalkori. That's the Pfizer brand name of a product which is now being investigated and approved, probably going to be throughout the world. The generic name for that is Crizotinib, actually, with an I. And these things, you'll find more and more things ending with a B coming out from pharmaceutical companies, because they're getting everybody conditioned to think of monoclonal antibodies, which are large protein complexes in everybody's body that attack things in the body that shouldn't be there. But unfortunately, these things are called monoclonal antibodies. And they've actually tried chemical trials of these things. I think there was one trial in England where 7 people died. Their heads all swole up to about 10 times the size of normal. So they've stopped using monoclonal antibodies, and they've started concentrating on smaller molecules that might mimic this. And that's what the B ending on these things will be. So it'll be a nib or a bint or a whatever with a B on the end. Anyways, back to this Crizotinib or Xalkori. These things only work for very, very small populations of people with cancer. They've had actual complete cures, but of only very small numbers of people. And for other people, there's all sorts of side effects, adverse effects, and people don't get any kind of responses. And the reason I'm bringing this up to you, and this is very important, the pharmaceutical companies are not there necessarily to help us with our health. They're there to make piles of money. And if they can't make a lot of money on a particular drug, it will not be brought to market. It will not even be researched, even though it may be effective, very, very 100% effective against certain people with certain types of cancer. So these become orphan drugs, in other words. What they really should be doing is determining what the biochemistry of the people that have been 100% cured is, and starting to collect a repertoire of these drugs so that they can apply the proper drug to the proper people with the proper disease entity, which is classified in the whole general scheme of cancer. But that's very difficult, very costly, and it will not be done unless people become aware that this is one of the ways that they have to somehow be forced into, so that the general population, the citizens of North America, of the world, have an opportunity to good health. Okay? So, that's an aside. The iodine is extremely important as an antimicrobial, not just viruses, not just cancer, but also bacterial infections, parasites, and all sorts of other things that cause harm in the human body, iodine is able to, a certain significant small fraction, it can deal with these things. That's why iodine in high doses is important for everybody. The immune function, for example, there's a white blood cell called a monocyte. What happens is when it sticks to something that shouldn't be in your body, be it cancer, be it a virus, be it a bacteria, the generation of peroxidase is initiated, and peroxide that is generated in the body of this monocyte then attacks whatever it's attached to. Peroxidase is extremely important in everybody's body. I wanted to go back to the, I did mention about peroxidase being found not only in the breast in high concentrations, but the very, very most important reason that ladies, even though they don't have symptoms of hot flashes and whatever, they've gone through perimenopause, should be supplementing with estrogens, safe estrogens, probably estriol, which is the safest estrogen and not commercially available. Cripps Pharmacy has been compounding that both in Triest and in separate estriol form, both in creams and capsules for the last 45 years. Jonathan Wright, my good friend, Dr. Jonathan Wright, and myself started that over 45 years ago for all of North America. Nobody knew what it was, and we popularized it. Now every pharmacy is doing it. They think they're doing it. Well, there's certain problems with some of these guys. But I urge everybody, even though your doctor will tell you, oh, you're through menopause, you don't need to supplement, or you think that yourself, you're wrong, because estrogen stimulates large increases of peroxidase inside the vagina, the uterus, and the ovaries. And this produces these delta iodolactones that regulate the growth of tissues markedly. They're sort of like traffic cops. If someone is too slow, they speed it up. If someone is too fast, they slow them down. Okay? This is extremely important in preventing cancer, all types of cancer. And it's a very, very general thing. So I urge you ladies to reconsider if you thought that you don't need to supplement with estrogens after perimenopause. Back to the fibroids and cysts. It also prevents fibroids and cysts in the uterus, ovaries, kidneys, liver. In general, it can prevent polycystic breast disease as well as kidney disease, as well as ovarian disease, but you need large, large doses of iodine. My good friend, Jonathan Wright, who was of Prevention Magazine fame, he had a column in Prevention Magazine for 20 years. He's also a Harvard graduate, so he's one of the creme de la creme in the medical profession, and he's an alternate medicine doctor, has been curing ladies of cysts and fibroids in the breast by direct injection of iodine for the last 35 years. So these are not new ideas, but they may be new to a lot of you because they're not generally well publicized. And you have to become aware of this. Tell your friends, tell your relatives, tell everybody you need to increase the amount of iodine intake per day, at least to the amount that you get in Japan. If they do further research on the 13 milligrams, I'm absolutely certain that they will find that larger doses will have concomitant, more beneficial effects for the body. And that's something that can happen in Japan because they have a very high base, and then they take supplements above that. They'll see further improvements in various conditions in the human body. The amount that we used to take in North America is 100 times less than what's being eaten in Japan now. About 250 micrograms per day. That's nothing. That's absolutely nothing compared with what the Japanese are eating as a supplement, as in their food. We've actually put together a salt supplement with 4 times the amount of iodine that's recommended for the daily intake of people in North America by dietitians, etc., and the government and everybody else who's in the know. They're recommending an intake of 150 micrograms. And I've actually put 4 times that much in there. For those people that are afraid of taking too much iodine, we have the salt substitute. That will not put your blood pressure up. That's why you need a salt substitute. And it tastes pretty well like salt. Also, one of the best sources of iodine is Ioplex. I don't know if we have any here. Yeah, sure, there you go. That's a slow release iodine. There is 12.5 milligrams per capsule of iodine. For children, we have a half dose. The reason you need slow release iodine is that if you have large amounts of iodine taken into your body at once, it overwhelms the receptors that are able to utilize and accumulate the iodine through the gut. In the Ioplex, it releases over an 8 to 10 hour period, so it slowly exposes all the receptors down the intestinal tract, so you get the highest efficiency of absorption of iodine. That's why Ioplex. Everybody should have some Ioplex every day. And generally, let's just review why you need the iodine. Mammary glands, 5 milligrams? Well, maybe more. 5 milligrams, Dr. Abrams found, was probably the average. There are ladies that require a lot more than the average. Antioxidant function in the brain for brain development in children to prevent brain deficiency diseases. And also, once you're healthy, your brain cells do divide after age 23. There's ways to stimulate that with alpha-lipoic acid and acetylcarnitine. This is something that was discovered by Bruce Ames at the University of California at Berkeley about 9 years ago now. Brain cells will regrow after age 23 or 24. It's not downhill all the way unless you so choose. We can help you with that as well. And if you're regrowing brain cells, you need extra amounts of iodine. Anti-tumor effectiveness. Well, I mentioned Dr. Gerson. Massive doses were effective in certain types of cancer. Breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer. Detoxification, well, heavy metals as well as the halogens, and aluminum. If anybody has high amounts of aluminum in their hair analysis, this is one of the ways of getting it down. And of course for the immune system. That's why you need iodine. Back to Mr. Cripps.
Thank you, Dr. Thorpe. Okay, we have covered the low blood sugar. Almost everyone with low thyroid has low blood sugar. So you watch page 26 is yes, page 27 is no, and 1 chromium will correct the low blood sugar. The low thyroid, iodine, we covered that. Now we're going to cover your digestion. We take digestion for granted, but it is very, very important. And with low thyroid, you have low hydrochloric acid in your stomach. and that's the key digestant. I think you have a sheet on function of hydrochloric acid in there. I'll briefly run over with. Okay. When the food enters your stomach, you secrete hydrochloric acid so strong it'll burn the skin right off your finger, and that's normal. It kills bacteria, viruses, worms, eggs, larvae, amoeba, sterilizes the food. It activates the B12, which you normally can't absorb. It ionizes the minerals, which normally without the acid you don't absorb. It activates the pepsin to pepsinogen. You start breaking down the protein. When the acid comes in here and duodenum, it triggers the bile salts and the pancreatic enzymes to come out. And then you're digesting your food and absorbing. So you can eat well, you can supplement, but if you're not absorbing, you become malnutrition. The hair starts coming out, the skin dries up, because you're not absorbing the nutrients. And hydrochloric acid is not available in nature. It can be made in the lab. It takes a lot of energy to make hydrochloric acid. It also takes a lot of energy for your cells to produce in your stomach. And if you got low thyroid, you got low energy, you got low HCl. So it's all tied in together. So you correct the thyroid, and these things will fall in place. So now I'll go to your thyroid worksheet and briefly run over. The medication, we'll leave it up to your doctor. If he's prescribed thyroid hormones for you, fine. Follow the instructions. The hypoglycemic diet we covered. Page 26 says yes, page 27 is no, and 1 chromium polyniconate will keep the sugar level even. Your sugar level has to be like this.
So what would be the best thing to eat for breakfast? Not fruit, is that right?
Well, you can have apples and pears, but anything on page 26 is yes, and page 27 is no. And no means no. Very strict for 6 weeks at least. And do not get hungry. Carry some food with you in case you get tied up in a traffic or something. You have a bite. Almonds are a good thing to carry with you. And if you're worried about weight gain, we have aminograms, 5 of those, and put a little bit of food, capsule is probably the best, on your bedside. If you wake up at night to go to the bathroom, have 5 aminograms or a few almonds to keep the sugar level level. If it doesn't drop too low, it's not going to go too high. And that's very important for about 6 weeks, or you become diabetic number 2. Going up and down over the years, you end up with diabetes. Okay.
There's one more thing I need to add, just to make it absolutely clear. Thyroid disease affects the number of people that Mr. Cripps mentioned in terms of ladies and men. What affects everybody is thyroid inefficiency. Everybody will suffer to some degree of thyroid inefficiency. Why? Because this is something that has been programmed into the human. In fact, all warm-blooded animals have this programmed into their biochemistry. As they grow and accumulate stress, you'll find the body temperature decreases. This is why you've seen in those old-time movies the icon of the old person, 80, 90, 100 years old, in a rocking chair, roaring fireplace, covered with 3 quilts and cold, cold, cold. He doesn't necessarily have thyroid disease, but he definitely has thyroid inefficiency. If you have thyroid disease, you automatically have thyroid inefficiency. But you can have thyroid inefficiency without actually being in a situation where you're diagnosed with low thyroid hormones. The thyroid inefficiency can be rectified or ameliorated in approximately 70% of the people with elevated amounts of iodine, like Ioplex, and tyrosine. So I just wanted to make this distinction clear, that we're not just addressing thyroid disease conditions, we're addressing everybody's condition, because everybody has aging. This aging process causes a loss of body temperature. And you've probably seen Granny and Grandma, they're all bundled up. Granny probably losing the hair on top of her head. This will grow back if you get the body temperature up. For those people that are the 30%, come and talk to us. We can suggest a few other things. Mr. Cripps, please.
Okay, the next thing is L-tyrosine, which is an amino acid. If you have good digestion, whether you make enough tyrosine on your own, and it doesn't matter if it's protein from animal or vegetable, it's broken down to the amino acids, including L-tyrosine, which you need to make the thyroid hormone. So if you have good digestion, you'll have L-tyrosine, and we supplement with iodine, there's your thyroid hormone, called T4. 4 molecules of iodine, 1 molecule of amino acid called L-tyrosine. So when you start a program, it's good to supplement that for a while. Eventually, your digestion improves and you'll make your own L-tyrosine amino acid. All you have to do is add iodine, you're home free. The digestion we covered, very, very important. We take it for granted. Chromium, to stabilize the sugar level, we covered that. Ioplex, sufficiency of iodine. And you need 13 milligrams. So we at Cripps developed a 12.5 milligram of slow release iodine. The other half a milligram, we figure you'll pick it up from the salt or maybe from the diet if you're lucky. So if you take 1 Ioplex, 12.5 milligrams. Now, iodine is non-toxic. Up to 100 milligrams is tolerable. But iodine releases all these bad guys. So you'll get probably watering eyes, a light headache, metallic taste in the mouth, maybe even a skin rash. It's not from iodine. It's
Also,
the
sensitivity of the glands, like the mumps glands, the salivary glands will be sensitive as well.
It's the detoxification of these items from your body. So, if you're very sensitive, you take 1 capsule, you can stop it there or 2, or you can start a lower dose for a week and then go to 12.5 milligrams. That's what you need per day. So once more, iodine itself is not the cause of skin rash and stuff like that. It's the toxin that eliminates not only the halides, but also mercury, cadmium, lead, aluminum, and
Nickel.
nickel. So you see how important iodine is? Not only for your thyroid, but it clears your body. Bromine particularly is a big, big issue. And there's no way of getting bromine out of your body once it gets in, except with iodine.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I've heard it replaces radioactive iodine.
Oh yes. If you're saturated or sufficiency of iodine in your body, then the radioactive iodine will not come in. So it also prevents, in case of an accident, you already have iodine in your body, you don't absorb the radioactive 131.
It's like you have a full cup of water. If you add more water to that full cup, it'll overflow. That's your protection. If there's any room there, then the radioactive iodine can be poured into the cup and it'll stay.
Now, the supplements, nothing to do with the thyroid, but for general health, it's good to take a multivitamin. We have two levels. One is called BEST, a little bit of each one across the board, and then there's a mega vitamin kit, which is a little higher level of all the essential nutrients. And it has 3 containers. You take one of each once a day. So that's your supplementation. Also, fish oil omega-3 is very important, and ours is enteric coated. That means it doesn't dissolve in your stomach. It dissolves later on, 2 hours later. You don't taste it, and you don't lose any of it. Because normally, omega-3 exposed to the stomach acid, you lose a lot of it.
One more thing, that could be an acid test to see how well your stomach is working. If you take 7 or 8 fish oil EC for supper tonight with your meal, and you taste fish, or you get heartburn or regurgitation, you don't have enough acid. Because the fish oil is designed not to dissolve in the presence of normal amounts of acid in the stomach. It's designed that way, and test it. And we have to test. The government makes us test. Otherwise, you can't claim these things.
I forgot to mention to you in your digestion, to start off with, you take Megazyme, which is hydrochloric acid in the capsule form, and a friendly bacteria, Megadophilus. Until your thyroid is corrected, you'll be able to produce your own HCl. But in the meantime, you do that. Okay. B12 supplementation for low thyroid is very, very important because you don't absorb B12 without sufficient HCl in your stomach.
If you do the fish oil test for acid and you taste fish, you get heartburn, regurgitation, you need to supplement with B12 because not only is there not enough acid being produced, but at the same time the stomach produces acid, it produces other factors like intrinsic factor that has to complex with the B12 in order to be absorbed. Without complexing, it will not be absorbed.
Drs. Brownstein and Flaccus tested 30,000 patients in the United States. That's where statistic is. I think Canada be the same. They tested 30,000 and 96% of them were iodine deficient. That means almost everyone is iodine deficient. Because in our diet we don't get enough iodine. We hardly get any. And if you take a teaspoon of salt, you only get 1/3 of a milligram. Like nothing. Yeah?
Can B12 really be, is it effective sublingual or do you really need shots?
Shots is the best thing. Sublingual second best, and oral is the third.
Yeah,
But if you can give yourself a shot of B12 when you start off,
yeah.
1 cc twice a week for about a month, and then once a week for another month, and then as needed.
And you can get that here?
Yeah, yeah. We can show you how to do it.
Okay.
And it doesn't require a prescription.
In fact, it's right here. And we have the syringes too. So we have covered the low blood sugar, we have covered the iodine and the thyroid, we have covered the hydrochloric acid, and I hope that this presentation was informative and educational, and this concludes our presentation.